Originally destined for use in far-off lands, but left behind to work on American railroads, and now bringing joy to visitors at a massive museum in Chicago, Frisco 1630 has had quite the history, and as you'll find, this Lionel version has a storied past of its own. Does the model live up to the hero of the Illinois Railway Museum? Let's check it out here on Datafied. A Cliff Notes version on this engine's history is still a little tricky to shorten, but I'll give it a go. The Baldwin Locomotive Works had been building 210 steam locomotives to be delivered to Russia in the early 1900s. But oops, revolution, with those pesky Bolsheviks in 1917, meant that 200 of these engines got stranded on American soil. So the United States Railway Administration, or USRA, purchased these, had them regauged to fit on American rails, and then distributed them to a handful of other railroads. This particular locomotive would be leased first by the Pennsylvania Railroad for a little bit, before being sold in 1920 for use on the St. Louis and San Francisco Railroad, better known as Frisco, even though they didn't quite make it to San Francisco, or anywhere close to that. Anyway, it would serve under this banner for 31 years before being sold in 1951 to haul ore cars in Oklahoma. At some point, it was returned to its Frisco paintwork and has gone through several overhauls and inspections, including that big federally mandated boiler inspection one that usually has engines out for years. It's now running stronger than ever and is one of the stars of the IRM, showcasing the power of steam to future generations. This Lionel example was offered in the 2023 Volume 1 catalog, along with a handful of other decapods. They all mostly have the same features, except Frisco 1630 has a front-mounted bell, and the others have a rear-mounted bell which has a swinging function. I found it a bit odd and, quite frankly, a little sad that the price remains the same for 1630 despite it missing the swinging bell feature that's found on the other versions. However, 1630 is arguably the most famous of the ones offered, as it is the only example of these that's still operating today. The others are on static display. Still, the model is a little perplexing. Of all the Lionel locomotives I've seen, nothing quite feels like this decapod. It has more exterior details than anything else on my roster, but it has this odd wired tether going to the cab. I've never seen a modern Lionel engine use something like this until I realized this didn't begin its life as a Lionel model. These were originally produced under the MTH Premier line, and besides a few details that have changed, it's mostly MTH's design here. There's more separately applied details than you'll find on this Legacy 280 or 460. There's a figure inside the doghouse on the tender, painted cab interior details, and an opening hatch on top of the cab. So visually, this engine is really nice to have on the roster, especially considering it can handle tighter turns. Lionel says the minimum curve radius is 0.42. Another one of those great, here's the minimum curve radius, even though we don't offer any tracks that are actually this minimum curve. Lionel, at least in Fast Track, only offers 0.48, which we have around the edge of our layout, and 0.36, which is tighter than what's recommended, but I do have 0.36 in my switch yards, and it still seems to work in there. It does seem like a tight fit, but I was honestly surprised because 10 wheels in a row is a tough fit anyways. The sounds on this example are really nice, and the whistle especially sounds very authentic. It's got generic crew dialogue, but it's nice enough. I am a little bit surprised at the sound output from this engine though. Likely due to the smaller size of the tender, this doesn't seem to be nearly as strong as my other smaller engines in my roster. There's a rear electrocoupler, but it doesn't seem to work too well to hook up to the other cars. When it contacts the car, it just kind of pivots to the side and never engages the clamp. I had multiple issues with mine in the yard and here on the main line. They detach just fine, but getting it to hook up is a little annoying. Smoke output is good here too. It used to be an MTH engine, so I would expect the smoke output to be good because those things are notorious for being huge smokers. Speaking of annoying features, though, like that coupler, not after a day after we started running this, one of the pins in the running gear had almost worked its way out. It practically derailed itself. It's not a huge deal since I tightened it and got it back on the rails, but it's just something to keep in mind to inspect your trains before running them. Even new trains are subject to having a loose screw here and there, and I've run into this on other used engines before, just never on a brand new one, but, mass production. Yay, the joys of that. The front has a scale dummy coupler with no option to swap it out for a full size, but that's alright, the details on the front are stellar anyways. There's a couple of small differences between the real 1630 and this model version, but for the most part, this is a good visual representation of it. Although, I'm not sure why Lionel used gold instead of white for the Frisco lettering on the front headlamp. Ah well. The chains aren't there on the prototype on the tender, but honestly, I think this is just kind of a cool looking feature that is not on any of my other engines here. My little engineer noticed this detail right away. Speaking of him, watching all those wheels in a row moving is always something he'll watch, but I've noticed him ignoring other steam engines on the line in favor of watching Frisco 1630. I'm sure part of this is just that new engine smell. He's always a fan of the newest additions to the roster, but I do think this is a little more interesting to look at on the line. Between the wheels, the extra details, the flickering ash pan, it's just a visual masterpiece in a really neat small size. So, like the real 1630, this Lionel version has a little bit of a weird past that still shows through. Its background as an MTH model isn't bad. Really, the only scar still left from that is the weird tether between the engine and tender. The rest is all pretty good, and we're pleased with ours so far. These have been out for a while, so there's not many left that are new to purchase. It's a bit on the expensive side anyways, but if you can find one for about a fourth the price or less, you're probably going to be happy with this. Paying full pop for an engine that's the size of a consolidation, but has no whistle steam, or in this case, not even a swinging bell, that can be a bit of a harder pill to swallow, I'd imagine. Die-hard fans of 1630 will appreciate it, but if you want a Decapod, it might be cooler to find one with the swinging bell feature, especially if they're the same price. Might as well get good value for your money, right? Anyway, that about does it for the Frisco Freightmaster. It's really cool having another piece on our railroad that's actually something we could go out and see the real thing of. Stay tuned to our channel by subscribing in case we do that. You'll want to hit the bell. We've made lots of other reviews, so check those out in this playlist. Please leave a like, especially if you've made it this far. You must like it, right? Please? Let us know what you think of this one down in the comments, or if you have suggestions on what you'd like to see in the future. We got more in the works, and lots we've made already that we hope you'll enjoy. We'll see you on the next one.